Hi everyone, Amna Nawaz here live in New York with some breaking news from right here in New York. Former Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner has been sentenced to 21 months in prison. This all part of what was known as the sexting trial, in which Mr. Weiner pled guilty to a charge of transferring obscene material to a minor. Our own Aaron Katersky was inside the courtroom. He joins us live now outside the courthouse. Aaron, 21 months. Was that what was to be expected in this sentencing?
It was at the lower end of what prosecutors had wanted, but Weiner faced up to 27 months in federal prison. He himself, Amna, asked for probation, but the judge said there was a need for deterrence in this case. Anthony Weiner sent obscene material to a minor, a 15-year-old girl in North Carolina, and he did it toward the end of a 6-year saga of self-destruction. He had lost his congressional seat after a decade representing parts of Brooklyn and Queens. He had lost what may well have become a successful bid for mayor. And finally, he had lost his wife, Huma Abedin, the Hillary Clinton aide who divorced him the very day that he was indicted. And now he is off to prison for the next 21 months, a sentence that caused him to break down in court. As the judge was reading it, Weiner's head fell. He sobbed audibly and stayed that way, not necessarily listening when the judge also imposed computer searches, internet monitoring, and other conditions after he's released from prison.
And Aaron, you were inside that courtroom, as we mentioned. I want to break down a little bit, as you mentioned, that 6-year saga from a rising star congressman to now he will be a registered sex offender. But inside that room, was Mr. Weiner allowed to speak? Did anyone speak on his behalf before the sentencing or after?
His attorney spoke first. Arlo Devlin Brown, the defense attorney, stood and said that this is no sexual deviant, that Anthony Weiner had a deep sickness when he was sending this material to a minor. And he himself, the defense attorney, called it stunning that Weiner was still doing this even after losing his congressional seat and after losing his bid for mayor that was supposed to be his political comeback. But he said Weiner was not some scheming criminal. He was sick. And he said he's getting treatment, and he spoke about remarkable progress that Weiner has made. And he spoke about the regret that Weiner feels, profound regret for what he had done, but also in a way gratitude that all of this had finally come to the surface and he could get himself help. And then Anthony Weiner rose in his seat, and through frequent clears of his throat and sobs, he told the judge that he has a disease but not an excuse. And he said he took full responsibility for what he did to the 15-year-old girl. He knew that she was a minor, and he said he was profoundly sorry. And in perhaps the most wrenching moment for him, he spoke of his son Jordan, 5 years old. He called the boy his salvation through his treatment. Said he always tried to teach him, when you get knocked down, you get right back up, but realized that that wasn't the right lesson, that he wasn't being honest, he wasn't being truthful, and only once he had to plead guilty to this crime did he start to understand that and get the help that he needed.
Aaron, as you mentioned, this is a man who has basically lost everything now. He lost his career, he has lost his family. He's currently undergoing divorce proceedings with his wife, Huma Abedin, who is a top aide, of course, to former Secretary Clinton. He's lost his reputation. He will now serve prison time. What is being said about him and the coverage of this story and this stunning fall? Does it compare to anything we've seen before?
Well, he himself said, he is living a smaller life now, and he spoke about how he will continually need therapy. The prosecutors, though, were really skeptical that therapy and all of this progress that he and his attorney spoke about would be permanent, and that's why the prosecutor said there needed to be some general deterrence, and the judge seemed sympathetic to that argument. The judge actually complimented Weiner for the progress that he was making and agreed with him that he has a disease, a sexual compulsivity that some call sex addiction, as the judge put it. But even then, she said there was the coverage, and she said because Weiner was so high profile and this story has been covered so intensely as it has been, that it could really serve as an example. And once she spoke about that need for general deterrence, it almost became inevitable that he was going to get sent to prison.
Aaron, I mean, Mr. Weiner's actions go down in history for a number of reasons, but of course, maybe even most significantly for their linkage to the election that we will never be able to stop talking about, the 2016 presidential election. I want to get your take on this because you've covered both for so long. Of course, just as a reminder to everyone, when federal investigators were looking into Mr. Weiner's emails, they found some that had been forwarded to a laptop he shared with Huma Abedin, who was, of course, then and remains an aide to Secretary Clinton. And then FBI Director Comey announced this link 11 days before the election. Secretary Clinton now blames that as part of the reason that she went on to lose the election. How has this framed your coverage of this trial, and did it play at all into how people see Mr. Weiner now?
Well, I think in some ways it certainly did. It brought the case to an even bigger audience because of the way it may have factored into the outcome of the election. As you say, Hillary Clinton blamed in part the loss for then FBI Director James Comey's actions upon learning that there were these emails on Weiner's laptop connected to Huma Abedin. And so Weiner, in this odd way, was still factoring into the political conversation 6 years after he lost his congressional seat because of all of this. But in court today, and in the coverage leading up to it, there was really no talk about the election. This was all about the downfall of a man who once held such political promise, a known fighter for liberal causes, an ally of Chuck Schumer, his political protege, and then the potential for a comeback as mayor of New York City, and enduring all of the jokes and the criticism and the tabloid coverage that is so infamous here in New York. And he went through it all, even allowed a documentarian to film his life. And once the extra texts that ultimately led to his downfall in the mayoral race became clear, he was still being shot by a film crew for this documentary. So his whole downfall became public. It's part of the reason, I think, why a different judge just across the way here in Manhattan said that he could not have an anonymous divorce, that the cat was already out of the bag. So his entire life and downfall has been well documented. But today, beyond what he said in court, Weiner arrived and left saying nothing.
Now, Aaron, you mentioned that 2013 documentary, and that mayoral run was supposed to be part of a comeback for Anthony Weiner after the allegations came up in 2011 and all the texts and the monikers and so on. Is there a chance, because look, there's no place that loves a comeback story more than American politics these days, is there any kind of political future for Anthony Weiner, or is this the end of that part of his life?
I think it's the end. Even his lawyer conceded there are second acts in America, but there are no third acts. And this became his ultimate downfall. As Weiner himself said in court today, being hit with a crime of sending obscene material to a minor was his rock bottom. There's probably no tolerance for a convicted felon now to really run for anything, especially one who was sending this kind of explicit material to a 15-year-old girl. And Weiner hasn't spoken of any resurgence. He has simply, and rather humbly, given his start in public life, said that he wants to focus on his therapy, on his treatment. He goes to sex addiction therapy. He goes to both group and an individual treatment a couple of times a week. And he said he wants to engage with his son in any way possible. And interestingly, that's going to factor into where he serves his jail time. At one point, his defense attorney asked the judge to recommend a minimum security prison somewhere in the greater New York area. And when the judge informed him that she would not recommend a specific prison for him to go to, she asked if he wanted just generally to be in the New York area. But that risks him being sent to prison right here in Manhattan, in a maximum security prison where he would have no possibility of contact with his son. And so he shook his head saying no, he did not want the judge to recommend a specific place to serve his time. He wants the chance, the off chance, even if he's far away, that the boy would come visit him.
Well, stunning fall from, as we mentioned, a once rising star congressman to now a convicted felon there. Aaron Kutersky, live for us outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan. Thank you, Aaron. And thanks to all of you for watching as well. For the latest on this story, head over to abcnews.com anytime or download the ABC News app to get the latest news and breaking headlines right to your phone or mobile device. For now, I'm Amna Nawaz, and I'll see you back here soon.